And we're off.
Cool.
Move this a little bit closer so it's easier for me to read. You find it? Yep, there it is. Hey guys, I'm a few minutes early. So hopefully you guys will notice. Somebody already liked it, so that's a good sign. That means somebody's out there paying attention.
Cool.
Two concurrent viewers. Okay, we got a couple people. Trinity says, I'm first! Hi! Hi, Trinity. Congratulations. Emily Phillips says, hi, thank you for your lovely presence. Happy Sunday. Thank you very much. And today is actually Ian's and my anniversary of from 1992 when we got married on the same day. This is the 29th year, so I guess in a way it's our Saturn return if we wanted to look at it that way. And the same day of the week as when we got married 29 years ago. So awesome. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yes, we are.
We're going to celebrate it tomorrow because it's just, it'll be easier tomorrow. I'm going to go and order some sushi from one of our local restaurants. We treat ourselves like twice a year or so to having sushi at the moment. So yay. Yes, Trinity says happy anniversary to us. And so we're very happy that we've been together this long, and our 30th anniversary of our first date comes up on the 5th of July, so then we'll celebrate again.
Why not?
Yes, why not? We know exactly what happened and when it did. Trinity says happy anniversary to us as well. Thank you. So you all know that I got shingles, and my owies are better as far as the actual blistering things. They've dried up and I'm off the antiviral at this point, but I still have all the nerve stuff going on, which is highly unpleasant and very uncomfortable. So I've been kind of yeah, sometimes in a lot of pain, but other than that, doing okay. And thank goodness I'm not taking all of that stuff again because it really messes with me. Apparently Emily likes sushi. She said sushi, yes.
That's right.
Yes. Yay, sushi. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I've been doing a little bit of research into the invisibility ring that's mentioned by Pliny the Elder because I'm trying to find a way to keep my granddaughter safe. So that's been just sort of interesting looking into the mythology around Helios, the god of the sun, who, according to the literature I was reading, is actually one of the Titans. So he was one of the elder gods, and his sisters were Selene. Oh, who was the other sister? I don't have my notes with me. I'll have to look at my notes to see what everything was, but I started looking into it because the invisibility ring is supposed to be made from heliotrope the stone, which is actually bloodstone, and use the juice from the heliotrope plant, and then do some kind of an incantation prayer or something like that on the stone when you put it together. And so I figured it would be good to know where those things came from. And in the process, I discovered where frankincense became associated with the sun, or at least the myth around it. And that had to do with Helios getting in trouble with Aphrodite for exposing her affair with Ares. And so she made him fall in love with a mortal. And of course, then the revenge was that they buried his love alive and he couldn't find her in time. And by the time he found out where she was, she had died. And so he turned her into a frankincense tree, and that's where the tears of the sun kind of thing comes from. So that was sort of interesting. And then heliotrope was associated with the same part of the myth because the other goddess that he was in a relationship with before he got cursed by Aphrodite to fall in love with a mortal was still in love with him, and she actually was behind the killing of his lover, his human lover, revenge and whatnot. And thought that it would free him up, but it didn't work. And so she marched up to a rock and sat on a rock for 9 days without eating or drinking, and she died on the rock. And then she turned into the Heliotrope Plant. So the plant, one of the things it does is it follows the sun. You can, if you have a heliotrope, you know where the sun is in the sky, whether it's cloudy or not, because the flowers will always point to the sun's location. So I thought that was kind of interesting, considering the invisibility ring kind of thing. So it's been fun. So that's been, nice.
And Pliny the Elder was before Agrippa too. Agrippa mentions the same ring.
Yeah,
in
they
his
said
stuff.
that Pliny the Elder's was the first written reference to that. So I'm assuming that they didn't lie about that. Who knows? So that probably means that Pliny the Elder was predate Agrippa. Yeah.
Any idea on when he was around?
I'd have to look it up at this
Okay.
point. It's like one of those things, you get those facts stuff in your head.
Doesn't matter, just curiosity.
Yeah, and then they go poof. So, so Trinity said that she's glad I'm doing better, and Emily says she hopes that I recover. Yes, me too, because not being able to use my hand is a bummer. Rosa Blanca says hello, nice to see you live. I think the others, yes, that's it. Eos, you're correct, because Aurora is one of my personal goddesses, and that's another name for Eos, Dawn, Aurora are kind of like similar things. So thank you for letting me remember what that was. So I thought, I know that was some piece of information that I thought was pretty cool. That's what happens, though, when you're having your pain processes and whatnot. So somebody wrote in and wanted to cover the subject about if somebody binds your powers, because that is actually a pretty common problem among witches, where other witches decide that what you're doing is bad, and then they try and bind your abilities so that you can't use them anymore. And I've actually had several witches try that on me, which I knew was happening when it happened. The one woman that we had in our group who went psychotic, she was one of the ones who did that, and I could actually feel the restriction as she was casting the spell around my arms, and I knew immediately what that meant, and I just like broke it instantaneously, because that was like, I'm sorry, you don't really have a basis for doing this. The universe is not going to like cooperate with this kind of a thing. So, what's wrong with you? So if you are aware and you know that, then they're not that hard to break, because really when it comes to that kind of a spell where somebody is trying to stop you from doing something that they think is bad, if you're not actually doing anything bad, then there's no energetic justification for the spell in the first place. I have bound someone in the past. I had a woman who attacked me, she was using dolls and pins and attacking me, my husband at the time, and my son. And I saw the dolls one night and realized what was going on. There was like, my husband at the time was complaining about stabbing pains in his chest, and my son was having horrific nightmares and whatnot. So in that case, I did a binding in order to stop her from harming me and mine, and I hadn't ever actually met the woman, which is kind of weird when someone you haven't met decides to do something like that to you. But I kind of put my astral senses or psychic senses on alert, waiting to feel that energy that I had sensed when I saw the dolls hanging in the closet in the vision. And I was standing in my kitchen one day just cooking or something, and then all of a sudden I felt the energy, and I followed the energy to the source, kind of like a bloodhound. It's like, because everyone has a very distinctive energetic signature. I think of it as a color and a smell. It's sort of hard to describe. But I saw this woman who I didn't know at the other end of it, and I did something automatic that I can't explain. And she was aware of what I was doing, and in the last seconds of me completing the process, I saw this flash of her knowing what was up, and then there wasn't anything. It's like she wasn't there anymore. So who knows for sure how long that lasted? And that's the thing. It's like, people can break their binds. And it just really depends upon all these other factors. So it's not like it can't work. One of the first things to consider is that do you have someone that you know that is upset with you for some reason, and they have either poor ethics or not very good discernment skills, and are they prone to like outbursts on other people? So if that's the case, then you want to unbind yourself, and you can do that with your own athame and cut your bounds and so forth. There's various different methods for doing that. Sometimes, however, someone loses their psychic abilities or what they think of as their powers and stuff like that, not because someone's done anything to them, but because they are doing things to be better themselves. Like when we're doing the grounding and centering exercises and stuff like that and trying to become more balanced in the elements, one of the things that often happens is that individuals have their natural abilities are when you're born and you're young are usually out of an imbalance that you have with the elements in yourself. And so someone with extreme psychic ability when they're young, and then they start following the path and start to try and balance themselves out, will usually see those abilities kind of dampen in the process of what they're doing.
But
and while
what they
they're doing
don't
that,
see is their other abilities growing just as well, associated with the other elements.
yeah. Nobody's saying anything, so I'm hoping everybody's still there. I still have a counter, so I'm assuming I didn't freeze. So anyway, yeah, that's the thing, is that when they do start coming back, then you have more control over them. So your ability to do what you want to do is at a much higher level than before that happened. So this is to the person who wrote in. Since I don't know the circumstances around why they're asking the question, so yeah, so that's something to consider.
One of the ways they do it, of course, is the old freezing somebody in an ice cube thing.
Oh, for the binding part?
Yeah.
Yeah, putting someone's name in water and sticking it in the freezer in a cup, and keeping them from doing anything as long as they're frozen. Yeah. Yeah, so...
But for it to really be effective, they have to be pretty...
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're looking at different levels of ability when it comes to that kind of thing. And if somebody is just a braggart and thinks they have a lot of ability and they really don't understand what they're doing, the things that they do aren't going to be as effective. So Rosa says, can you recommend protection for home and property? Is this okay to ask? Absolutely. It's fine to ask. I have a couple of videos up about protection, and depends on what kind of protection you're looking for. I have a lot of that kind of stuff set up around my yard. I have my witch's balls that I made, or they're sort of a form of a witch's balls. I used some floats, colored floats, and I put different stones around them to represent the different elements and hung them in the front of my house.
They have pentagrams. And
they have pentagrams all over them, so if someone steals one, they're in trouble. They should know that they're in trouble if they try to take one. So it's old-fashioned kinds of protections for the home are things like the cross brooms, which I did a video on how to make your own set of cross brooms, witch's bells on the doorknob, which I haven't done a video about, but that one's pretty easy to look up, and
stones at the corners of the property that are charged up.
Right, charged up stones.
Like a big piece of obsidian we have somewhere.
Yeah, we have a big boulder of obsidian in the front of our house. And you can bury them on the edges of your property and charge them up energetically that way when you're casting your circles, or once a month or something like that, just to continue the process of making them stronger and everything. And then there is nets. The idea of a fish net can be a decorative thing, but you can also turn it into a magical kind of something that catches negative energy coming towards you. There's the blue bottles. You can put a blue bottle. This is a folk thing. Appalachian, I think, is where it came from. Where you take a blue bottle and you stick the the bottle over a branch, which is not necessarily good for the tree. So some people are taking that to, not do that. They're like building something to put it on and make it a decorative thing for your garden. And then any negative spirits that wander into your yard get attracted to the blue bottle and then go up into the blue bottle and then can't get out until the sun comes up, and then it like dissipates them. So it's sort of like a spirit trap, I guess, but not one to use the spirits, one to just keep negative spirits from getting to your front door. So those are some of the outdoor basic kinds of things. And statues, we have a Fu Lion on our front step. I bought some.
Needs re-epoxy.
Yeah, but it's still, yeah. We got that at Goodwill. It's kind of like a house protector. I have some masks, like scary masks or whatever that I've put on the outside of my house and charged up for protection. And then to keep your environment clear of other people's thoughts and energies, I have little craft mirrors, and they're in most of my windows. When we started getting a lot of negative feedback from a whole bunch of people that we thought we knew and suddenly didn't. It's sort of weird when someone's true nature comes out when you're around them, and then you find out you really don't like them at all. But you can take a mirror and have it facing outward, and that's like a reflective surface. So anything negative coming towards you gets bounced away from the surface of the mirror. And they don't have to be very big. You can do small ones and just tape them on your windows facing out. And if you're in an apartment, you can do the same thing. You put them on the walls that you share with other people and do the ceiling and the shared walls and the floor if you're on a second floor, if you have someone under you. So you can adapt those kinds of things to whatever your circumstances are. And of course, then there's actually doing the casting of a circle and calling in the directions and having a relationship with a deity that wants to serve as a protector, all sorts of other things. So Rosa says, wonderful, thank you so much. And Trinity says that she's done the freezer binding and it worked. From South Carolina says, we used fake wire trees for our paint bottles so real trees aren't harmed. Yes. And I thought some of the things that people came up with, those are just fantastic. I mean, they're quite beautiful. I don't have any bottles at the moment to use. I had a bunch of blue bottles, but I used them to make witches bottles. And that's something else you can do, is I do have a video on that where you can make a witch's bottle, and also has the instructions for making the Four Thieves vinegar that I now use in my witch's bottle instead of just wine or grape juice or whatever. I think usually the original ones were wine that they recommended you put in. But wine vinegar by itself works pretty good. But the Four Thieves vinegar is like more potent because it's got a lot of like hot stuff in it. And there's a list of all the different ingredients you can choose from to put into your Four Thieves vinegar. And I really like that because it lasts forever. Pretty much all you need to do is to replace the vinegar that you use. So you just buy some good quality wine vinegar, and then after you've used it in something, you just fill it back up because the herbs are all still in there, and then they'll just imbue the new fluids with the energy of what you've done. So that's like, do it once, you've got it forever, so long as you keep adding more vinegar to your stuff. So that works good. Yeah, so there's that. I'm now ready for questions, I think. Lozenge in me. I've been sneezing all morning. It's just annoying. I woke up and just started sneezing 5 times in a row, and then every 10 minutes, another 5 sneezes. So I've been on antihistamines for a while. Makes me kind of scratchy. So, what do you guys want to talk about? Did you guys get to watch the newest video I did on the power of words and have any thoughts on that and bring up any stuff for you guys? I didn't realize I had talked so long because I just do my thing, and then later I always remember something I wanted to say but then didn't. And now I don't remember what they might have been. But we have that full moon lunar eclipse coming up too. I think it's supposed to be on Wednesday, 26th. So that should be fun. We have a bunch of quiet people today. Emily says, yeah, I thought the fact about solar energy being used to conceal also was interesting. Well, yeah, that came from my research into the Invisibility Ring. And then it turns out that Helios was also called the God of Sight. So, if you're too bright to look at, people are going to avert their gaze because it's uncomfortable. That's my thought in that, as far as the invisibility spell goes. And if he's also the God of Sight, maybe he can make people not see things or something like that. That's sort of the feeling I'm getting from it.
Yeah, I agree.
He agrees. So yeah, we're having fun. Even when things are not feeling well, I still find some ways to kind of learn new things. Trinity says that I'm listening and cooking, so she has a hard time typing in her questions. I'm guessing that that's the case.
I've got a list of the Greek gods for each planet, gods and goddess.
Well, that's a very limited list. They just have Thea and Hyperion for the god and goddess of the sun. They did mention Hyperion in the article I was reading about Helios. Canary says, hello everyone. Hi, Canary. How's it going? Have you managed to keep the sweet creatures from overwhelming you since we talked last week? Yeah, these look like the old gods too.
Yeah.
The elders.
Yep.
We're having a quiet group. I'm excited about the full moon, though. Of course, I'm going to be doing my usual amethyst crystal web thing, charging it up, but I'm hoping that it's actually not going to be cloudy, although the forecast calls for rain for the next few days, so probably won't be able to see it yet again. It's like, this kind of stuff happens. Oh well, astronomical events are the way they are. Doesn't mean the energy's not going to be there. Catherine Leslie Faye says, hi. Canary says, yeehaw, they haven't been around this week as I've been walking a slightly different way. Oh, I see. You figured out their path and avoided it. That's not a bad move. Seems like a good thing to do. Avoidance, nothing wrong with it. Especially if you're not going to get anything out of it for yourself. Because, you're not. Except annoyed. So, Catherine, how are you doing this week? And also, too, Canary, how are you doing as well?
I noticed the blackbirds are starting to get friendly out front now, like the crows.
Oh, the red-winged blackbirds are getting friendly?
Them, yeah.
Interesting. Yep. We have a couple of crows that are getting extremely friendly in my front yard, and they're not even waiting for me to leave the yard to jump down onto the peanuts. And I'm thinking that they must have grown up with me being the person in the community that they came to for peanuts. They're probably just a couple years old or something, and I've been doing this for a few years, so they're becoming much more familiar with me, which is kind of cool. So Brenda says, Brenda Rose, what can you tell us about dream catchers? And then Catherine says, I'm still tired from the move and unpacking boxes. Oh, that's so fun. But her new place has trees galore. Well, I made everyone a dream catcher, and I did some research to find out the tradition of the dream catcher and how it works. And then I did my own little take on it. So instead of just putting the beads in there to catch the bad dreams and stuff when they came in, I did a series of beads that went through the elements and Akasha, all 5 of the elements, and then grounding them out and so forth. So my granddaughter was having horrific nightmares every night, and that's why I decided to try it out. And red seems to be the traditional color. I always find it amusing when I see people have dream catchers hanging from, their car window, rearview mirror. And I'm like, I hope they're not dreaming while they're driving. This would be a bad thing. It's certainly a nice design, but yeah, I made my own, and they seemed to work pretty good. So that's awesome.
If you take the basic idea is just a net that catches it, you can make them any way you want. You're not trying to be traditional American.
Right. Absolutely. Same like the idea with the net in the front of the house catching things and whatnot and binding them up. Dora Mifra, sorry I'm late, but hello. Hope everyone is good. Hi. So Priestess Felicia showed up. Hi, Priestess Felicia. Canary says, I'm doing all right, thanks. When I had a healing session, the goddess Isis came through, and I was told she has been trying to connect, so that was interesting. Yeah, Isis was one of my earlier goddesses, too. I remember being a priestess to her in 2 different past lives in Egypt. So I always had like a connection to her energy. So that's always interesting. Dora Mifra says, sorry I'm late, but hello. Hope everyone is good. I said that already. And we're doing okay. We're just sort of recovering from our various ickies between the shingles and the abdominal cramping that Ian's going through. Life just sort of happens sometimes. You have to figure out how to deal with it. And that's the thing. Last week I said something about you don't have to look to magic for the solution for everything. And the reason I said that was because I've noticed on some of the forums that I'm in that there's a fair number of people that think only about using magic and nothing else to solve all of their problems. And since we're in a lot of different planes of reality, magic is one thing that can help and certainly assist in any endeavor that you're doing, but it's not necessarily the only response you should take to any given situation. Restraining orders are fine if someone's stalking you. And you can get enough evidence against them, I guess. So it was interesting thinking about that experience I had that I call the naming tree. Because that happened before I read any official books. Like the current in the 80s is when a lot of the earlier books came out. It was obviously I didn't know Gardner, any of that stuff, before I ran into Starhawk's book in the early 80s. But yeah, it was like the fact that I experienced that was so unique and different from anything else I think I've ever experienced. It sort of stood out as far as that went. Dora Mifa says, totally agree. Okay, it's always good to get agreement on whatever it was. Anywho. Canary says, I wonder whether I could get a restraining order on some of these preachers. It could be harassment at this point. Yeah, that's going to be one of those tricky things. It depends on where you live and what the rules are and so forth. So you might not be able to, the old, freedom of speech and whatnot. But yeah, it might be worth looking into. Because the thing about bullies is that they continue to be bullies until somebody stops them. It's like they don't have any consideration for others. They don't care about what's going on for somebody else. It's just all about them. They're very self-absorbed. Usually they're very insecure as well, but I'm sure not all of them would think that. That would be just my opinion. Canary says, probably being sent to my area by my grandparents. Ah, trying to save you, are they? Trinity says, Siofra, can you tell me the name of your Etsy shop again? Siofra's Magic Alcove, just like the YouTube channel. I tried to make it simple, and my Gmail is the same too. Siofra's Magic Alcove at gmail.com. You know, try to be consistent across the board so that you don't have to remember more than one thing. So hopefully that helps. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. We've had 50 playbacks. Canary says, yep, need to save my soul from Jezebel. Hey, Ryder has just arrived. Good evening, all. Hi, Ryder. Nice to see you on. Always good to have you on our group. Yep, so we know about people trying to save your soul. It's always a dangerous proposition. Canary said hello to Ryder. You guys have such cool emojis, or whatever the heck. Kind of fun to look at.
One of the things that bothers me about people trying to save your soul is that they have the audacity to believe that they have, number one, anything to do with it, and that they're so superior that they know. They're definitely better than you when they're trying to teach you that. They know.
I actually ran into that on one of the pagan forums, believe it or not. The Dunning-Kruger effect is like rampant throughout all levels of society. And if you haven't heard about the Dunning-Kruger effect, it was an experiment that was done a while back now, where they took two groups of people, one group that was not as smart as they thought they were, and another group that was smarter than they thought they were. They kind of knew where they were at on the smart scale, I guess. And then they gave each group, the individuals in each group, a task to do, and then they had to grade how well they did the task. And so the group of people who thought they were a lot smarter than they actually were, universally graded themselves excellent. They did an excellent job at that task. In fact, they aced that task. They did such a good job on that task. No one had ever done such a good job before. And the group of people who were actually smarter than they thought they were all had things to say about what they did that they thought they could improve, and they didn't think they did the task as completely as it might be able to be done, and they had aced the task. I don't know what the tasks were, but it just sort of gives you a feel for when people think they know everything. They're generally speaking in that first category of people who think they're smarter than they actually are. Because people actually know stuff, know that there's a lot of stuff they don't know, really, when it comes to that. And the conversation was sort of an odd little side conversation. Someone says, have you read this book where they say that angels are the lords of karma? What do you think? And I'm like, I've met a lot of angels, and I don't think they're the lords of karma. I would think the Saturnian heads would be the lords of karma if we have to have lords of karma in the first place. I was promptly chewed out and thanked for my opinion that she wholeheartedly disagreed with 100%. And because she knows what angels are here to do and what they're up to.
And she has a complete misunderstanding of karma.
Well, there's that
because,
too.
You know, where the whole karma thing comes from isn't in Christianity. And that is an example of taking something out of place and sticking it in a place it doesn't belong. According to Christianity, you are punished by God and his angels, but that's not karma. The idea of karma is totally different.
I agree.
So.
Yeah, I just commented after the first part of it. I said, well, they're probably not anything like we think they are anyway, because, you know, we're deciding what they are based on our limited experience and understanding of these forces that are larger than us. And what we're making are assumptions. And most of us don't even know what assumptions we're making. And then we're drawing conclusions from those assumptions. And then we think that those conclusions must be true, whether or not we can prove them or not, and whether or not they are true. It's like So trying to be open-minded about what might actually be going on helps us to actually learn more. I guess that's the scientific approach. So, Ryder says, happy anniversary to you and Ian. Hope you both have had a lovely day. Well, so far we're hanging in there. We're going to celebrate tomorrow. And Canary says, yes, it's the fact that they seem to think they're so godly that they know, and God put them on this planet to speak for him. As if their God was real, he couldn't tell me himself if he has such a problem. Well, one of the things to remember is that people can only comprehend up to their ability to understand. And not everyone is going to, we're all here at different levels. We have different levels of understanding and comprehension and different levels of experience and everything. So, it's like boundaries, important. We definitely need to have boundaries and not let the people that are trying to pull us down to their level and make us more like them when we've already passed through that part and are on to something else. So we definitely don't want to be drawn in, interacting with, trying to convince them or whatever, because they are where they're at. But then again, their ability to comprehend is just limited. It's just where they are.
If you try to get them to comprehend something that's above their level, they'll get a warped idea of what you're trying to tell them, and it's basically can end up tantamount to lying to them because they have such a misunderstanding of a concept.
Yeah, I'm sure all of us at some point have experienced a situation where someone asks us a question, we give them an answer, and then what comes back doesn't seem to relate whatsoever to anything we just said. It's almost like, what language did they think I was speaking when I opened my mouth? And what did they hear? And I think the reason for that is the people that are still projecting all the time, they're constantly projecting on everybody else. And so if they're one of those people that are always looking for whatever it is that they think they're supposed to be looking for in other people, or what they're worried about, or what have you, they can hear a single word in everything that you said, and that will open up a can of worms in their brain that will lead them down a rabbit hole that will come out into a cesspool of stuff that now they're in because they haven't done the work to clear themselves out and to be more conscious and aware of who they are and the fact that everyone is different. It's interesting.
Yes, well, it's amazing to me that people can communicate at all sometimes because of you're trying to take an idea and then you're trying to turn it in this concept into words, and you're trying to transmit it to this other person who you hope interprets the words the same way, but there's actually a lot of small differences in interpretation. So it's hard to tell that what you're saying even really gets through, because it's like everybody has a stained glass aura around you with different colors of stained glass, and it comes in at different angles and slightly different,
Absolutely. So Philippa said, I'm late, but I'm here. Happy anniversary to you both. Thank you very much. Canary says, I got to go with my crystal. This crystal, just touch it, will change your life. It's your salvation. That's right. This crystal is the only crystal on the planet that's been sent here by the gods of the universe in order to make you become enlightened. There are no other ways. Isn't that Moldavite? I think. And boy, they want a pretty penny for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, enlightenment's expensive. And Desert Doradum says, howdy, hope you are both feeling better today. Am definitely feeling a little bit better. Canary says, yep, Chinese whispers. I actually had, when I was in Texas, I had an experience with somebody who was doing that. They were projecting stuff on me, and I was actually, in those circumstances, able to stop it from happening, turn it around, and get through to her. But it took about a half an hour of extremely focused conversation and work on my part, and I needed to get her permission to do what we were doing. So Desideradum says, would be great to talk about cryptids today. That's been my fascination of the day lately. Well, I haven't met any cryptids, so I only hear the stories like everyone else, and I don't know how that relates to magic and paganism and stuff like that. It's more of a, there are some out there, maybe people have encountered them, maybe we haven't caught one to look at for sure.
That's something I know nothing about.
Yeah, I mean, I've never encountered Bigfoot. I've encountered some people who have encountered Bigfoot, but I've not had a personal experience with it. So anything I would have to say on the subject would be secondhand, third hand, fourth hand, something I read, something I watched on TV. So I'm not sure how that would become a discussion. I can only speak to what
Sorry.
I know. Yeah, it's just the way it is. Jonathan arrived. Hi, I'm here. Hi, Jonathan. Glad you could join us. Um, yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of mysteries in the universe, and our individual unconscious is probably one of the greatest mysteries of all time. So I try to work on that one myself. Canary says, hello, Jono. Nice to see you on here. I mean, I've been fascinated by all that kind of stuff from time to time. I was really fascinated by Edgar Cayce's readings and how some archaeologists were using some of the stuff that he put out there to actually go and find archaeological sites that he mentioned with Atlantis in a number of his readings. So it's always fascinating to me how that can work. But again, I don't have any cryptid experiences. I have all kinds of things, out there, but no cryptids. Oh, chupacabras or...
That means you're not actually the source of all knowledge in the universe?
I know, it's disappointing, isn't it?
Oh. I don't know. I thought you were kind of...
Yeah, I know. I've had that before. When I was channeling, a lot of people thought they could just ask me anything and she would know everything. And mostly she knew something about everything, but even she had limits. I'm not a universe encyclopedia. Share what I know. Ryder laughed. And Canary says, I'd love to see a cryptid. So would I. It'd be kind of interesting. It's always interesting to see new things. But anyway. I was talking to a friend about how expressing things that have happened to you and putting them into words and getting them out of yourself helps to diffuse their power over you, which is another way that words have power.
Providing you can let go of them well enough.
Well, it can take time. I mean, it's like the first time you share something intense and difficult, and one person hears it, then that gives you a little bit of relief. But then the 30th time somebody hears it, and the 100th time, each time...
It definitely loses power each time.
It loses its power over you each time that you say your truth. And that's probably the basis for most psychology and, talk therapy or whatever, is to be able to express and get that out. But from an energetic point of view, it definitely works. And figuring out how to give back the energy that doesn't belong to you, that you're not responsible for, because this is all about taking personal responsibility, right? But if it's not your personal responsibility, you shouldn't have to carry it. And that's what often, emotional trauma does to people. It makes the victim have to carry the energetic trauma instead of giving that back to the perpetrator and making them have to deal with it, because by rights, it's their stuff to deal with. So people are wondering what a cryptid is. By the way, hi. Hi, Snowy. A cryptid is like a creature that doesn't have any actual standing in biology at this point, because we haven't found where they live and what they do and what their habits are, but people keep saying they see them. So Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti would be one kind of cryptid. The Chupacabra would be a cryptid. Chupacabra.
You almost said it right.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
Chupacabra.
I think it's a bra, but yes. So that. Canary has a good description. A cryptid is like an unidentified physical being, like Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. Yes, Emily says, I've seen a couple of UFOs, but no cryptids. Yep. Same here. I think UFOs are more common than cryptids, actually, as far as, like, the number of people who've reported seeing them. More people report seeing ghosts or having ghostly encounters than report encountering cryptids. So it's kind of interesting.
I was really surprised to find out how many people actually see ghosts.
Yeah, it's quite a percentage. There's a high percentage of people that have had at least one encounter with someone who has died on the other side, usually on right around the time of their death. That one is actually a pretty common experience, and they may not be psychic or have any abilities whatsoever, but that might be the time that they're going to experience it, like when a parent dies or a sibling dies or someone that they care about a lot dies, and that spirit comes to try and comfort them and let them know that they're okay or what happened and where they are. So Ryder says, I've experienced about 4 UFOs in my life. Darcy McKelvey says hello. Hi, Darcy. Canary says, people just won't admit it out loud. A Little Pillow Company says, hi, Heather here. First time to catch you live, by the way. I'm just joining, so missed a bit, but sounds like you're taking questions. Are you reading anything interesting right now? Hello, Darcy, says Ryder. Well, I'm reading about Helios, the elder god of the sun, and doing research into the invisibility ring that Pliny the Elder mentioned to try and make one for my granddaughter. We already got her the ring. We got the bloodstone ring, and she has arrived. And I have a heliotrope plant, which I'm going to have to juice at some point, or buy another one because we got sick right after I got it, and it may be dying at this point because I didn't get it planted in the ground. Philip says, good book for learning how to return other people's energy, especially if it's unwanted, is Your Aura and Your Chakras, The Owner's Manual by Carl McLaren. Good to know. Ryder says, and I have had a fair few supernatural encounters, too many to number. Yeah, same here. I've been trying to number them in my videos, and I still haven't run out of things to talk about.
I haven't been reading anything that isn't really old.
Philippa says, don't be put off by the title. It's a great book. Yeah. Sounds like it could be interesting. Ryder says, hi, Little Pillow Company. But her name is Heather.
Oh.
It's not actually Pillow.
Okay.
A period pillow. Little. A little. It's not little. Okay. I'm making fun. I'm sorry. Apparently. Just thinking of it as a name.
I think it's a cute name.
I think it's a cute name too. And she says, hi. Desideradum says, seems like cryptids are nature spirits. Also curious if possibly some stories become real by people creating thought forms.
Hey, does that mean Santa Claus is a cryptid?
That would mean, yes, Santa Claus would be a cryptid if someone actually saw him.
That was uncalled for. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, though, because he'd be a manifestation. I think that some stories might become real by people creating thought forms because, I mean, I know of the case of the woman healer in Texas who created a version of herself made out of the fire element. So I know that can happen, and but it's dangerous because she had no control over it, and it was running around wreaking havoc because it was only fire and nothing else. So that's a possibility, and it might be dependent upon where you're at in your head as to what you're going to see and what you're not going to see.
Of course, that's a big part of the way people in India enliven their statues and such. Making a little duplicate of the deity, their own energy.
Yep.
So they end up with their own version of the deity.
Well, right, like with Santeria and the statue you get in the beginning, usually you get him, what's his name?
Well, there's Eliwa.
That's that, usually an Eliwa.
Or Legba, depending on which
tradition you're
basically
part of.
the same guy, more or less.
So Philippa says, my home seems to be filled with ghosts I still haven't cleansed and sealed. Well, see what happens. And the Little Pillow Company says she never set up a personal account, which is perfectly fine. Canary says, I try and keep a diary of my more memorable experiences, but have thrown it away a few times after reading it back to myself out of fear someone would take me into a white van. Well, I can understand that anxiety for sure, because, sometimes that's what they think. Jonathan says, Siofra, Ian, have you done any magic you regret doing? Nothing comes to mind.
I have something that kind of comes to mind, but I don't know how much of it that I actually did. But that was the thing where I had a guy giving me real trouble. I was going to get a new car, and he took the title of my car and kept it. And I decided I didn't want to get the other car, and he kept trying to run it through the loan places, and he kept my keys and wouldn't give them back, and it became a big issue. And I did a little working to resolve that, and I don't know how much I affected it, but he ended up having a shootout with the police and got killed. It turned out he had cancer or something, and he was desperate for money, and so I kind of regretted that I did anything in that case, but I don't know that I actually affected the situation, since it sounds like he was in pretty dire place to start with.
Well, yeah, he'd have to be if that was going on. Emily says, Santa Claus is a mushroom. And she had an E on the end of it, so she took it off and put it in without the E. Canary says, Santa Claus is a cryptid. Yes. Apparently they all like that one. Desideratum says, platypus used to be a cryptids, then there was enough proof to take them off that list. Well, the first time someone actually found the remains of a platypus and they revealed that he was accused of fraud.
I thought they sewed it together.
Right, because nothing could have those different parts and be a single creature, so yes. They didn't believe it was real until they actually came across a live friggin' platypus, and they went like, oh my god, it has a beaver's tail, and a duck's beak, and a poison claw, and it's just like, what? Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, and Trinity says yes, Eliwa and Papa Legba. Oh, got to the bottom. Canary says, Welp, even bees defy logic. This is true. According to aerodynamic theory and mathematical formulas of aerodynamics, bumblebees cannot fly, and yet they do it every day. So sometimes reality has its own decisions to make, and people have to figure out why they can manage to do something that we don't think that they can. So J.B. Pennick says Santa equals Satan. Ha ha ha. Very close spelling. Same letters. This is true.
Yes, I put it that.
Yes, I think all of us have done that. And of course, dog is God spelled backwards, which I realized in a dream, and I laughed really hard in my dream for a long time. Apparently, I thought that was just fantastic. Like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Jonathan says, Ian, that sounds like a crazy exception. I haven't heard anyone ever say they regretted doing magic except for crazy exceptions. Well, I mean, clearly there must be some people who regret doing magic because they become witches, they start to do magic, it starts to work, and then they revert back to a religion that says they shouldn't do magic and they deny the entire thing. That I've seen a fair amount.
And I haven't done anything really that I regret. I have done some things that were kind of stupid, like I forgot I had a talisman on to protect me from contact with any beings, and then I tried to invoke that being, and of course it whacked the talisman and I got a back blast from that, so it didn't hurt me, but it was certainly a shock, so I guess you could say I might regret that, but
well, you learned something. You learned something from it.
It was just being dumb, yeah.
Yeah. So Amber Oryx says, hello from Australia. In my experience with cryptids is that they use portals to travel the dimensions. Okay, you have more experience with cryptids than I do. And certainly there's the possibility, considering the fact that, we even now have scientists talking about the multiple Earths, multiple universes kind of thing. Canary says, people that backtrack to be like, I didn't think it would actually work. Well, I love the one where they ask you to do something for them, you do it, and then they never speak to you again because it worked. Yeah. They were like, I asked you to do this because I wanted it to work, but now that I know that it works, I'm afraid that you're going to do something to me because it worked. So let me never speak to you again. I get that one fairly often.
Yeah, she's had a lot of that.
Philippa says Jason Miller has regretted a couple of workings. He mentions it in his defensive magic book. Can't remember the title offhand.
Jason Miller.
Me either. But I mean, at this point, I'm not reading a lot of magical texts because I really don't need to learn too much on that subject. It's not the one I'm focused on. It's like moved on into different areas of research.
What I'm reading is still mostly the ancient tantras, so they're hundreds or thousands of years old.
Well, I remember your days of alchemy, my goodness.
I was getting somewhere with that, though.
We had a huge alchemical lab in our house for a long time.
Until I caught our microwave on fire.
Well, yeah, catching the microwave on fire in the kitchen, probably not such a good look. But, yeah. But he figured out what they were talking about, even though it's very abstruse. The whole way they write and everything is an attempt to hide the truth from anybody who's reading it unless they actually know what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on, trying to make sense of it is like makes your brain go.
But you can understand it if you work hard enough. But it just wasn't important enough for me to continue putting the time and effort in it that it would need, personally.
So Canary says that she's had that happen before. Had people ask her to do readings for them, and then they never talk to her again and walk away when they see her. Ryder says that's a shame that people respond that way. Well, it's typical, though.
It scares them.
It scares them, the fact that something that they don't understand could actually have an effect on physical reality. I mean, I had that happen when I did the long distance healing on a longtime friend's daughter, and I did it in the mental plane. And when I called the mother to find out what happened and found out that the daughter's ulcer had been cured that night, that I had done my thing, I was pretty jazzed because it's kind of like external confirmation that our thoughts affect reality, because all I was doing was imagining things like 1,000 miles away from where she physically was. And I knew what had happened in my imagination, and it was not just coincidence that it happened, similar things happened to her. She had her first out-of-body experience. Her grandparents came to take her away while I was doing my part to heal her ulcer. And that woman never spoke to me again. She started becoming a follower of Jerry Falwell. And apparently I affect people like that a fair amount. I have had any number of long-term partners that have gone back to the church because of knowing me. I was like, oh dear, I'm not sure why that happens, but
considering you don't do anything bad, it's kind of funny.
Well, I know I think a fairly good ethical stance that I take, but I also believe in self-defense, which makes me apparently a gray witch, I guess, according to the definitional things of that. Ava says, I'm reading about alchemy now. She thinks it's funny we brought it up. Right, it sounds fun, Ian. Darcy says, kind of off topic, but I am studying herbs and how I can use them on my start in meditation and astral projection. Have any of you used mugwort or wormwood, and what other herbs do you use? Well, I know that mugwort is actually supposed to be helpful for dreaming. I actually made a candy for scrying out of parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. I made a hard candy out of them because it's actually an old formula for divination and for getting inspiration and stuff like that.
But also, Charlie Tom's group, the
Modoc?
Medicine Lake. In
Medicine
his
Lake.
book, yeah, he talks about the Vision Quest, and they use mugwort under a headband.
Oh, like putting on your third eye kind of thing?
Yeah, and
wearing it on your skin?
While they at for that particular ritual, they drink boiled acorns is all they drink until they have the vision, and then they put the mugwort under there.
So, but always do your research when it comes to herbs, because some of them could be extremely toxic, and anything you put in your body, anyone can be allergic to anything. So the first time you use something, do a small amount of it and see what kind of an effect it has. With mugwort, you can put it in a pillow and put that underneath your pillow for having dreams and things like that. And you can certainly use different herbs to generate different kinds of dreams and energetic connections. You just have to do your research to find out which ones. Jonathan
Of course,
says,
since everybody's body's different, they all react differently.
okay, so Eva says, any insights on alchemy? Canary says, at Ryder, come back here.
You started to say something that Jonathan said.
Well, then I realized I'm behind, so I had to go back up the list.
Okay.
Canary says at Ryder, I've had it, man, times, even by people who are spiritual. Yeah, this is true. People say they're spiritual, but it may not actually be real. Emily says, super love alchemy, looking to get more into it, not in practice personally, but in theory.
Yeah, I was mostly involved in plant alchemy for my practical experimentation.
So Nisha says, microwave on fire from your alchemical experiments? I love you too. It's true.
You don't want a burning microwave. Those plastic and those things are so toxic.
Oh.
It was bad.
Yes, he had to keep running out of the house and running back in and spraying it with the fire extinguisher. So Jonathan said, Jason Miller, Protection and Reversal Magic. It's a good book. Is that Jason Miller, the person who wrote that book? Canary says, that's hilarious, to be honest. Philippa says, you can make a small pillow stuffed with mugwort too. I accidentally said that already. Okay. Desideраtum says, are there any nature spirits who are dangerous? And yes, the answer is there are. And I've met a few of them. And I'm not sure if they're quite nature spirits, but they are ancient beings that have no connection with human beings whatsoever. And so anything you come across that's bigger than you, be very respectful. And hopefully you don't meet one that makes you go insane, because that can happen too. So J.B. Pennick says, my herniated discs were healed instantly by an amazing lady after MRIs and months of massive pain and pain pills. It was gone in a moment, changed my life direction, I believe now. Awesome. It's always good when the healing works, because there's a lot of factors that are involved in doing any kind of energetic healing. The person who's getting it, the person who's doing it, the state both people are in at the time that it happens. It's not like straightforward. Philippa says, I was burning mugwort recently in a working and I was trying not to inhale it. Properly should have opened a window, but it did leave me feeling high. I definitely don't recommend smoking it though. Ryder says at JB Pennick, that's fantastic. I'm glad you're no longer in pain. Yeah, no kidding. Philippa says, yep, Jason Miller, that's the book I was on about. Okay.
Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
Look it up.
The Little Pillow Company says, have you ever met or spoken with Pan? Yes. I like Pan. Pan is awesome. I've met him a couple of times. Most of them in dreams, but once out in the woods in person. And I was sort of freaked out briefly because I didn't expect to actually see his face like that.
Did you know that Lovecraft claimed to have seen Pan, and it was a religious experience? Saw Pan with some nymphs dancing around in an orchard, and he claimed it was a religious experience, and though he became a materialist later in life, he still, there was something to that.
Awesome.
He believed in it completely.
I don't think I've ever heard that. You've been holding out on me.
Well, no, it's just in this book I was just looking at.
I see. He was just reading it in a book he's got in his lap.
Oh, yeah. Say they haunted his fiction for the rest of his life, making perhaps their most memorable off-the-scenes appearance in his story, The Great God Pan.
Cool.
Oh no, that was Arthur Machen. Sorry.
Oh, not Lovecraft. Okay,
No,
correction.
well, no, I was right. The first one was Lovecraft. This thing I just read wasn't, though.
Oh, okay.
It said, here's what the book says. Once he even saw Pan and a band of nymphs dancing in an oak grove. He said it was a religious experience just as meaningful and valid to him at that time as that of a Christian who feels the reality of Jesus. As an adult, he passed it off as illusion and became a strict materialist. Anyway, sorry.
There are some there's some tapes out there that you can find, conversations with Pan by I never remember his name until I look him up. He was part of the people that founded Findhorn in Scotland. So if you can find the longer version of it, I recommend listening to it. It's pretty entertaining and informative and stuff about the fairies, the actual fairies, folks, and nature spirits, and how they really feel about things from someone who was encountering them directly. So let's see. JB said he wasn't lying about his healing. It's amazing to feel whole again. Canary says, sometimes healing works when I do it and I amaze people. Some people say they don't feel anything at all. Like I said, it's complicated. There can be a number of factors involved in that. Jonathan's Church says, if you and Ian are interested in what the quote-unquote cool kids are reading these days, Jason Miller is a very popular author. He's no Barden, but who is? That's true. He's a one of a kind. The Little Pillow Company says, what did you talk about? Oh, you mean with Pan? It wasn't really verbal. It's energetic. But when I had him, when he came to me in my dream, I was working on getting rid of the last vestiges of my childhood programming and to the specific Christian church that I had been a member of. I was raised in a Methodist household, or part one of one. And so when I started meeting some of the deities, gods and goddesses in my dreams, I felt pretty confident that I was getting down into my subconscious and was clearing all that stuff out. Canary says, any good books on powerful verbal spells? And she says to Jonathan she hasn't heard of Jason Miller. Yes, love our Olga Oh, Crombie, that's it, which is why I asked. Yeah, I heard that when I was up in the Kispiox Valley, so the late 70s, early 80s is when his material was available to me, and it was actually marvelous.
Whose?
R. Ogilvy Crombie.
Okay.
He was the guy from Findhorn who he had all these encounters with the fairy folk and stuff. It just started happening to him, and he walked with Pan on a number of occasions, and they had
cool.
all kinds of long conversations about everything that would come up, possibly. So, Felipa says, Findhorn, Jason Spangler. Yeah, I think he was one of the founders. Little Pillow Company says, figured you have and wanted to know what you talked about. You mean Pan again? Apparently I'm jumping around conversations here. David Spangler. Yes, that would be more correct, I'm sure. Jonathan says, Conversations with Pan is on YouTube. I listened to the whole thing. It's interesting and very easily accessible. Yeah, I was glad that I found it because I was trying to remember it quite a while ago when we were talking about the Fae at one point. So Amber Oryx says, Dolores Cannon books are amazing. She's a true pioneer. And Canary says, who is this Pan? Pan would be the embodiment of male sensuality and fertility. I say that would be the best
And
description.
Nature,
Nature, yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. And that movie, The Seven Faces of Dr. Wu, I think is what it's called, or Dr. Lau, The Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, is an old movie I recommend because Tony Randall does the best interpretation of Pan and what he would be like if he were, if you encountered him in person, which is wonderful. He's from the Greek pantheon. He's supposed to be sort of a satyr, goat hooves, and I think horns. the pan flute. He plays music that nature dances to, and is just delights the heart. And yeah, there's other similar gods in other cultures that are like him. Cernunnos would be the sort of Celtic version of Pan. Um,
And of course, there's Bacchus who likes to party.
yeah, but Bacchus
I know
actually
he's not like Pan.
he's not
I
like
know.
Pan, really. But he's in the same pantheon. Pan and is in that particular Greek pantheon that has Bacchus in it, or the Greek version of Bacchus, whatever that is. There's always
Dionysus.
yes, Dionysus would be the Greek version of Bacchus. I don't know if Pan was like universal through Greek and Roman mythology or not. I haven't really looked, because there's always that kind of thing. So Ryder says, we'll have to listen to that. Canary says, thanks, not heard of him before. All right. There's always stuff.
Yep.
Jonathan says, what an amazing question. Who is Pan? It's almost bigger than humans can comprehend. He's the horned god, consort to the triple goddess. Yes. He's definitely a force, to say the least. And I've met a few gods here and there, and as well as some goddesses. And the gods are always interesting because it's never what you expect when you have an encounter. It's very overwhelming for both sides, I guess. Just definitely interesting. Like, the better you know yourself, the more centered and grounded you are, the better able you are to identify when something extraordinary is happening to you. Because if you know yourself and your own energy, your own thoughts, and the way your mind works, when something that is not you shows up, it becomes obvious. And so the encounters I've had like that have been, when they happen, they're just obvious. There's no wonder if this is happening to me kind of questioning going on at all in my head. It's like, oh, hi. When we do the sacred tree meditation, when we were doing it as a group, with 6 or so of us together, we would actually pull in the goddess into the center of the circle during doing that meditation numerous times. It really connected that energy there and brought her in. So it's interesting. Desideratum says, David Spangler wrote about Pan regarding the dangerous nature spirits. Could you please elaborate? What happened to you? Okay. See, there's a couple of them. One is a Native American spirit that I had read about in a book, and I never have been able to find the book I read it about in. So for all I know, I never actually read about it. You know what I mean? Because the book I thought it was in, I read the whole book and it wasn't in there. And it's a huge being. It's probably about 30 feet long and 10 or so feet high, and it has 2 heads, one at each end. So it's like a worm, long, dragonish kind of shape with a head at either end. And they're few and far between. They're not everywhere. And I happened to be outside of Monterey at a cabin when this happened, a cabin in the woods. Was with my boyfriend at the time, and we went for a walk down this nice wooded path, and the sun was starting to go down, and it was becoming twilight, and all of a sudden I had this feeling, and I looked behind me first, and I saw all these shadows, that were being thrown onto the floor of the path, and suddenly knew that inside of each of these shadows was some dangerous thing that could hurt me. And I felt the 2-headed serpent thingy coming, and I knew what to do. Whatever happened, however I knew this, whether I actually read it or not, this is a test for a warrior spirit.
I'll be back.
And as the first head approaches, it's kind of terrifying to see, and it's like it's hard to explain because it's huge. It filled up the whole path and filled up the space. And the trick with this particular being is you have to stand your ground and wait until the other head makes it to you as well. So the idea is that the phrase that I read was, "He who sees the other half of self sees truth," and that this is its only opportunity to see the other half of itself, is finding someone who has a strong enough spirit to stay there in the face of the head to allow it to see its other half. And once that happens, it becomes an ally. If, however, the person who encounters that particular spirit doesn't understand what's happening or runs, it can cause insanity. This is the one that I was referring to that can cause you to go crazy. And the woman who was in our circle, she was with me and another person on a north of us, up around Waldport, and we were on a nature walk. And similar conditions in that the sun was starting to go down, and all of a sudden I felt it coming, and I knew what it was, and I told everybody what to do. She said she didn't feel anything at all, and I think that that was probably bad, because she went psychotic not long after that. And that's what it says it can do. So yes, they can be dangerous. One of the other non-human beings that I encountered was not far from here. I was clearing a friend's house. We were like she was moving into it and wanted to make sure there was nothing there. And it was sort of like a feline, tigerish kind of energy. Clearly not a human spirit of any kind, not a nature spirit per se. It's different than a nature spirit, like it's not associated with a plant or anything like that. And as I began to approach it, because I'm always curious, I mean, I felt this energy, and I'm like, "What are you?" And when I'm dealing like paranormal investigations, usually my first go-to is to get closer in order to connect with that empathic ability that I have, so I can feel what's happening and get images more clearly and so forth. And I started going towards it. It was stuck in a corner in the front room of the house. And as I approached it, or started to approach it, suddenly I heard growling, saw teeth and claws, and knew immediately that that was a bad idea to continue to go towards it. So I backed up to give it space so it didn't feel threatened, because you'd never corner a wild animal. And so then I figured out what was happening, and it had been stuck in there for a while. And I think people had been throwing books at it, yelling at it. It had that kind of energy. I would imagine that depending on a person's religious belief systems, they would think it was demonic, for example, because, I mean, teeth, claws, growling, definitely could claw a wall. I could see that happening, or throw an object. It had that kind of energy to it. So what I did is help it get out of the house. So I assisted it, and I used a selenite wand piece that I have, which is a nice, good long piece, and I can it projects light out of it. And so I used the light projecting out of it because it could see the light coming out of the selenite, and I let it know in pictures that I was helping to lead it out of the corner, and slowly backed up, and it followed the light, and it followed me down the hall, and it had enough substance to it that it cast a shadow on the rug in the hallway. And so I got it all the way out of the house, and when it got out of the house, it was excited and happy and curious, and sort of took the woman whose house it was, took to protecting her space without being asked to. I mean, it actually had residence. It took up residence in her bamboo she had a group of bamboo plants, and you could actually see where it was sleeping. It crushed the leaves, so it's sort of like almost physical, but not quite. And considering the fact that we have a pretty good sized planet, and just think about the number of different types of ants that we have, as just even one example, or birds, and how many different kinds of birds there are, different sizes, the different temperaments, and the different roles that they have. Just know that there's probably a lot of things out there that no one's even written about or necessarily encountered. So you have to alert when you go into a place and you feel something. Oops. It said I lost my connection, but then it came back. Oh no. Exit. Now it's back to an excellent connection. That was annoying. So that would be some that would be a potentially dangerous thing, and apparently maybe they don't like to be talked about. I don't know. All right. So it looks like I'm still there now. Let's see. So Jonathan says, Jonathan says, you've met a few gods. I bet your Pan was the horniest god you met. No, probably not, but definitely up there. That was kind of like his aspect. Even considering what you said about Thor. Well, Thor just likes me and I get hit by lightning, so I don't know about that. Canary says, I think I'll stick with Isis. Yeah. Desideraatum says, oops, David Spangler may not have written about Pan. It was the Fae and the subtle realms. Jonathan says, Canary, you think Isis is human? She's as much a primal force as any of them. My sister-in-law used to work with her a lot. Well, that's true. She has all those veils, too. You can see, I think that's actually for our safety, the veils of Isis. So as she uncovers herself, hopefully she uncovers only enough that you can stand it. And then as you get better at perceiving, accepting, and not being negatively affected by the energy, she'll take another veil off. Just sort of one of those things. Desideratum says, on the flip side, are there any stories of nature spirits who have loved humans? Well, there are certainly some stories about that, but who knows for sure how true they are. Barden talks about the possibility of, like, elementals becoming physical enough with a magician or spirits of other planets and so forth, and how dangerous that can be. So if there are those kinds of things out there, it's probably a bad idea, because if you align yourself too totally energetically with any spirit realm, regardless of its potential positive things, then what can happen is your energy changes to the point that when you die, you end up going to their realm instead of to continue on the path of human evolution and, your spiritual evolution and stuff. The Little Pillow Company says, George MacDonald, the Scottish writer from the 1800s, wrote about his two-headed thingy in one of his children's stories, Princess and Curdie, I believe. Whoa, interesting. I'll have to look that up. Canary says, Jonathan, no, I know she's not. Her wings are beautiful. She makes effort not to overwhelm me and gives me notice just before appearing. Okay, apparently I intuited that before I got to it. Canary says that Jonathan, she can be very firm and very blunt, though. I'm sure. Jonathan says that sounds like a healthy and excellent relationship. Okay, let's see. Canary says that Jonathan, with other beings I've been around, she's the one I just feel the most settled around. And she says yes. Jonathan says, here's a question to Siofra and also all the viewers here. What god or goddess would you recommend someone start with if they are new to this? I started with Aphrodite. She's amazing, but fickle. I started with Aphrodite too. Actually, I guess I started with the Virgin Mary, come to think of it. I wasn't Catholic, but somehow when I was younger, Mary kept popping up, and I think that's because Moida, the spirit being that's my higher guardian spirit person that I channeled, looks a lot like and has the same energy as Mary. So, Mary being a virgin goddess, her energy and any of the other virgin goddesses might be easier to handle, I suppose, in the beginning. I don't know. But it's going to depend upon your own history, spiritually speaking, like other lifetimes, who you're connected with. I mean, I remember Isis. I remember Aphrodite from a Greek life. I was a Pythia at the Delphic oracles once before it was for Apollo, from what I remember. So, if you've made connections in other lifetimes with specific energies, they're going to be easier for you to handle. And there's no way to tell for sure what's going to work for somebody or not, just off the top of our heads. Canary says, I wouldn't mind going to see some other realm. Well, nothing wrong about seeing it, but you don't necessarily want to end up there for the rest of eternity and becoming them instead of staying yourself, I guess is the warning. Amber says, everyone is different, so I recommend you open yourself up and let them come to you. They know best. And you can always say no like anything else. Boundaries, we talk about them all the time. It's good to have them. Canary says, it's different for everyone, I'd say. It depends on which one is best to you to connect with. Factors like personality, act, etc. For example, I can't see Isis working with someone who was too full of themselves. You mean having an ego? That's probably true. I went to a play in Santa Cruz years ago that was dedicated to Isis and stuff like that, and I was kind of upset at one point during this play. The woman who was being Isis in the play, or being the priestess of Isis, I can't remember now, it's been too long, dedicated everyone in the auditorium to Isis. And I'm like, excuse me? Without asking permission or anything like that. And I kind of feel that that's a violation and not smart. It wasn't harmful to me because I already was connected with ISIS. And I already knew it. But that's not going to be for everybody. So, yeah. I think people who do that don't actually believe that what they're doing is real. It's got to be the case. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
She's just sort of thought that this would be a good thing for the world to have a bunch of people think that they were connected to ISIS or something. I don't know. But I was offended on behalf of everyone who was in the theater suddenly being dedicated to ISIS without their permission. Permission is a rather important thing for me. Philippa says, Frida K-hole keeps popping up in my life. I had no idea who she was 2 weeks ago, and now she's everywhere. And I'm pretty sure she's not a deity. We get those synchronicities things all the time. We're talking a very strange phrase. We'll talk about some obscure friggin' subject in our living room, and then the next 3 shows we watch say the same friggin' phrase. And we're just like, what the heck? Okay then, that's strange. Canary agrees with me that that's kind of messed up to dedicate people.
Yeah.
No, they don't think they do. That's like how I reacted to people trying to dedicate me to Jesus against my will. Yeah, it ought to be free choice. It's like, the thing that gets me is why people seem to think they want to make everyone like them, because that's kind of homogenizing the world. And being different is not a bad thing. We all have different skills. We have different experiences. We have different things we're here to do, or different things we might want to do. And, we're not all here for the same thing. And I find it sad that some people are so threatened by others that don't feel the same way they do about what they like, that they want to either stone them to death, burn them at the stake, or convert them. And that's not just Christianity, it's just anything like that at all. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be religion even. So yeah, being more open-minded, definitely an important thing. Philippa says, yes, I get that too. Yeah, isn't it strange? You wonder, these people did this thing months ago, that they put this thing in the can and it just waited for you to have a conversation before it popped up on your TV? Synchronicities. They can be definitely fun. Canary says politics is another example. Yes, I like the faces with the crosses for eyes, X's for eyes. It's like, yeah. I mean, everything. We have so far to go when it comes to human evolution. We are all fighting the wrong thing. Instead of learning about who we are and becoming better versions of ourselves, not everyone is not doing that, of course, obviously. But the majority of people aren't. And, yeah, so, oh well. The universe is vast, mysterious, and mostly unknowable. And if we can know even a small section of it, I think that's a pretty cool thing. And how much more interesting is it to focus on that than this other stuff. So JB says, after I was healed and started meditating and studying metaphysical subjects, I started feeling the energies of things. Didn't think chakras were real until I started feeling them. I know, it's funny, isn't it? I can grab one, pull it out, and it bounces back into place like jelly. I also start to see the energetic fibers that make up my energy body, like very small hairs of light. Yeah, it is interesting, no doubt about it. And what was it you had the other night looking at the picture of, was it Muktananda?
Yeah.
And suddenly realizing all the other pictures of him that other people were looking at around the world, and feeling the energy coming off of that, which is always interesting when you can connect. There's different psychic networks, and I once had an experience where I was flying around in outer space and I could see all these different telepathic networks between all these different groups. It was just so obvious, and I could like dip into one of them and hear what they were talking about and dip into another one. And I had a Rosicrucian drop by in the astral into my room right after that happened to check me out to see if, like, because apparently they noticed that I had dipped into their secret communication channel, and he just determined that I was probably not a threat and went away. I'm like, sorry, things aren't as secret as you think. Jonathan says, speaking about deities, Ian, would you mind giving us your view on whether the Hindu deities are individuals or rather aspects of a singular divine? Canary says she thinks it's both.
Well, that's a rather deep question, actually. So if you go back into some of the most ancient writings, it's said that the particular deities were created on purpose by the rishis, who are the ones that are supposedly like totally enlightened, and that they created these deities on purpose to work with humankind. So undoubtedly, in addition to that, all the worship they've got over the years has built them up, and there is well, at this point they're basically real. I cannot say whether I think they had an independent existence before that, but they certainly do now, and you can pick up on that. And when they enliven a statue and that type of thing, it's understood that they're bringing down the aspect of that deity into the statue, but it also is like a little elemental where it has as much power as they give it. And they give it life, and it can have some of their individual quirks, their version of that being, because it's really a compound of them and that being. So everybody's little, if they enliven the statues or a picture, they all come out a little bit different, but they're all held together by the same idea, like of Ganesha. So they all have that similarity. What was the original question now?
View on whether the Hindu deities are individuals or rather aspects of a singular divine.
So, I would say yes, they are aspects of a singular divine, at least in concept. Okay, that's the way they're pictured, and that's the way they were supposed to have been created. So they are. I can't say whether they had an individual existence before people or not. That's something I have no certainty about whatsoever.
In most of the pagan, like in Wicca, they believe in an individual single deity that created the universe, the creative intelligence or whatever, and then it's split into different parts, and those are the gods and the goddesses that we interact with. And it's easier for us to connect with them emotionally. at least on some level. And that's one of the things I like about it, is that you can find an aspect of the divine that is doing something that you're working on that you need help with, or that you want to learn more about, and you can connect with it that way. Marcus says, hope you're well. Love from London. Hi, Marcus. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be done in a minute, though, because we've gone past our 1 hour and 30-minute mark. Jonathan says, nice answer. Thank you so much, Ian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we probably should wrap this up at this point and talk to you guys later. Send in any questions and things like that that you want me to cover. You never know what we're going to talk about on these live shows, which is one of the things I like about them. Keeping me on my toes. So,
that's true.
Okay, guys. Don't forget about the full moon coming up on Wednesday. Check your local moon rise thing and lunar eclipse time. It's supposed to be mostly visible in the west, so the farther, on the coast where we are, and Hawaii should be getting a good view. I'm not sure where else it's going to have a good view, so it's always good to check your own local times and figure it out, because just because they say Wednesday doesn't mean it's going to be Wednesday night. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday morning. I mean, or whatever. Amber says, thank you so much, beautiful people. You're so welcome. Really appreciate all you guys.
Thank you all for being with us on our live chat.
Someone was recommending Sad Guru, who seems to know a lot about the pantheons, especially Shiva.
Right. I've
You've
viewed
watched
a few of his videos, yeah.
Yeah, apparently Ian is familiar with him. Okay, guys, blessed be, and everybody stay safe out there, and healthy. So, bye.
Blessed be.